Welcome to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Building Supply. I'm your host, Don Magruder. If you like today's show, go to aroundthehouse.tv, where you can sign up for our YouTube channel and our weekly newsletter. Well, winter's upon us, and one thing that's going to take a beating this year is your grass. And there's a lot of things going on with grass, from pests to weeds to all kind of funguses. We have a true expert to discuss your grass today, Chuck Hackenberger for Turfmasters Pest Control. It's going to be here, and we're going to talk about the things you need to know to keep your lawn green and wonderful this winter. So with that, I'd like to introduce Chuck Hackenberger from Turfmasters Pest Control. Chuck, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Good, Don. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you here. You are what I view the grass man. You know everything about grass, and you've been here a long time. But first, tell us about Chuck Hackenberger and Turfmasters Pest Control.
Well, we've been in Leesburg for about 24 years now. We specialize in lawn fertilization, insecticide, and weed control. We also do your landscape, your ornamentals, bushes, trees, but that's all we specialize in, is just your outdoor property.
Now, Chuck, I'm sure people are going to have questions after this show because you're going to discuss a lot of issues.
Yes.
What's a good number, or how can you be reached?
Our phone number is 352-406-2210.
What areas of Central Florida do you service lawns?
Mainly Lake County. We go into Marion County and a little bit into Sumter County also, but mainly the general Leesburg area.
Now, I've heard from a lot of folks that 2019 has not been a great year for weeds and pests for lawns here in Lake and Sumter County.
That's correct. Earlier this summer, early in the year, we had a lot of rain, which promotes a lot of weeds. And then we have a dry spell, which will generally take those weeds and they will put off lots of seeds. So the weeds this year have been almost out of control.
How do you, what's your view about this winter? What do you think winter's going to offer?
Well, I'm hoping that we have a little bit of a cold snap, maybe a light freeze that will cut back on a lot of these weeds. I keep my fingers crossed. I don't want a hard freeze, but something to slow the weeds down.
But Chuck, I hope you're more optimistic about cold snaps, because I hadn't felt no cold yet.
No, not at all.
Let's first talk about what type of grasses are prominent here in Lake and Sumter and Marion County. What are people using as far as grasses?
Mainly St. Augustine grass, zoysia grass. The villages have gone away from zoysia grass. They're now going back to St. Augustine grass. There are lawns out there that are Bermuda, but these are all generally different types of turf grasses.
The big hazards for grass is bugs and weeds and funguses. When you talk about these grasses, what are the biggest problems affecting these grasses in this area?
Well, right now, one of the biggest problems we have is drought, not getting enough water to them. But this time of the year, generally, we will have chinch bugs or mole crickets that are attacking both kinds of grass. Now that we're coming into the winter or cooler months, we're going to see a lot of funguses out there, both in zoysia and St. Augustine grass.
Okay. Tell me about a chinch bug. What does that, how do they look and what do they do?
They attack your St. Augustine grass, and they're very tiny. They're the size of a pinhead. They're black. There's a lot of bugs out there that are small, like chinch bugs, that are black, but a chinch bug has a perfect white X in the middle of their back. That's how you can tell them apart from other small bugs.
So if your St. Augustine's infected with chinch bugs, what's the general signs?
It basically looks like an area that's not getting any water. It'll turn brown and the grass will slowly disappear. A lot of people mistake it for irrigation, and they water it, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and that's how you know that you have chinch bugs.
Another issue I understand is mole crickets.
Mole crickets mainly attack Bermuda and zoysia grass, and they will basically, they'll have the same problems. It'll look brown, it'll look dead, it'll just slowly go away, and the only thing you can do is just constantly treat for insects.
And what about army ants?
army worms.
Armyworms.
Armyworms, they will generally, armyworms, sod webworms, they will come in and attack mainly St. Augustine grass. It literally looks like someone has gone out and mowed a small area in your yard, and that's how you can tell you have sod webworms or armyworms. They generally will not kill the grass, but it looks bad for a couple of weeks after it's sprayed, but it will eventually come back.
So they basically eat the tops off.
They eat the top half of the grass off.
Which one, when you're mowing or walking and all of a sudden these little moths like fly up, what are those?
That is the sign of sod webworms. And the moths that you see don't do any damage to your turf. They come in, they lay the eggs, and when the eggs hatch, they are armyworms or sod webworms. And then they start to eat the grass. If you don't have an insecticide there, they just keep right on eating until there's nothing else to eat.
What about brown patch? That's a common problem, and brown patch is different, isn't it?
Brown patch in St. Augustine or zoysia patch in the zoysia, it's a cool season fungus. It can come in and start as early as November, or it could be January or February when it starts. There's nothing to prevent it from starting if you've had that in years past. It'll come back in the same spot year after year. It's just a matter of you have to treat it when it starts to keep it from spreading.
And the biggest thing is you can't treat all of these pests with the same stuff in all the grass, correct?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of different products that we use for insects, different funguses, different fertilizers, different times of the year, and different herbicides, different times of the year.
I know you're not a proponent of the big box store bag and feeds and stuff because
Right.
there's virtually nothing in them.
Right.
Tell me why you're not a...
Well, most of your fertilizers that come from your big box stores, the fertilizer's okay. It's the insecticide or the herbicide that are in these containers that they are just a very, very small percentage of active ingredient that usually the herbicides aren't strong enough to kill the weeds, or the insecticide is not strong enough to keep bugs from eating your grass.
Well, Chuck, you've mentioned weeds multiple times in our discussion, and we're about to go to the Romac Building Supply Show and Tell Desk. Believe it or not, Chuck has brought some samples of weeds that are affecting our area right now, and that way we can show you what to look out for. So stay tuned and learn about weeds. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Around the House. I'm your host, Don Magruder, and we're at the Romac Building Supply Show and Tell Desk with Chuck Hackenberger. He's the owner of Turfmasters Pest Control right here in Leesburg, and we're about to talk about weeds because you're a weed expert. So we've got samples of weeds that you said are the most prevalent and the most dastardly this year.
That's right.
So I'm going to bring this first sample out.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, what weed is that?
This is called carpet grass.
Uh-oh.
And we see it mainly in shaded areas under oak trees. It usually will not grow in the direct sun.
Okay.
We see it a lot in flower beds. People are having a lot of problems with it. The only thing that will kill it is Roundup.
Really?
Yes, nothing else kills it. So it's become a very big problem when it gets into your turf, because then you're spraying Roundup in your turf and you're killing your turf as well as the weed.
So that's a bad grass, and Roundup's a tough spot, so you definitely don't want that in your yard.
Definitely don't. If you see it and it's a small piece, just go and pull it out by hand.
I recognize this because I've had this all in my yard,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got hitchhikers on it or whatever.
Yes, those are little seed pods, and this is a type of sedge grass. And the bad thing about it is, as you can see, there's lots of little seeds, so when the lawnmower hits that, it's going to throw seeds all over the place and spreads very, very fast.
Isn't that one of the problems with weed spread here?
Oh, definitely.
People have so many lawn services, and technically you should rinse off your lawns,
Right.
your grass from another lawn.
Yes.
But aren't these lawn services just spreading weeds all
Yes.
over the place?
If you have a really nice lawn and whoever's mowing your lawn happens to come to your house after they've been in a community or a neighborhood that has lots of bad lawns with lots of bad weeds, they're bringing that right into your lawn.
The other thing about this grass that I found out is it's almost waxy. How do you kill this grass? Because it doesn't seem like nothing penetrates it.
Well, weed killers will not kill this. We have to use a specific chemical just for sedge grass. And we have to add a lot of surfactant, which is a sticking agent. And the sticking agent will stick to these leaves pretty well, and it has to stay on the leaf blade for approximately 24 to 30 hours before it gets mowed, or else it won't work.
Now this looks like parsley. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I wish it was parsley.
So that's not edible?
No, well, you can eat it. I don't think it's going to be good.
No, that's not the smokable.
Nope,
No,
you can't do that either.
Can't do that either. All right.
But
what is that?
It's artillery fern.
Uh-oh.
And it's also called fish scale fern. And it is a weed that is very tough to kill, to a point where you can spray straight Roundup on it and it won't kill it.
Really?
It will not kill it. There's only a few chemicals out there that will kill it. The only bad thing about these chemicals is if you get it close to bushes or shrubs, it's liable to kill those also.
So it's going to be collateral damage.
It's probably one of the worst things out there.
And the fourth weed offender you have this year is that?
That is spurge.
Spurge.
And it's usually pretty easy to kill. The only problem with that is when we kill weeds, it doesn't kill the seeds. So when you have a weed like this, and it might have 200 or 300 seeds on it, it will drop all the seeds back down, and then you have a whole new generation of weed in the same place you just killed them.
Plus there's other weeds that are affecting us.
Oh, yes. I mean, you have dollar weed, you have clover, and they're all the same. They all have lots of seeds.
The thing about it, most over-the-counter products can't do anything with these.
Not really, no. There's really nothing over the counter. They're not strong enough to really kill the weeds that we have in Florida. Other parts of the United States, they work fine. Florida, the weeds are just too strong.
Chuck Hackenberger, thank you for being our guest today. One more time, if someone had a question about any of these weeds or other topics you discussed today, how can you be reached?
They can get us at area code 352-406-2210.
And I want to thank you for watching Around the House today. Be sure to go to aroundthehouse.tv to sign up for our YouTube channel and our weekly newsletter. Plus, catch our Around the House newspaper column Saturdays in the Daily Commercial. Until next time, we will see you around the house.